Who would you like me to have on my show that's gay that maybe I haven't had?
One of the most controversial interviews you ever had was Farakhan.
Yes.
I mean, people were literally...
That was controversial before he came on.
I've said a prayer, and there's nothing else to do but say, ladies and gentlemen, the leader of the Nation of Islam, Minister Louis Farrakhan.
The 1990s kids would remember before Sean Combs became Puff Daddy P. Diddy, before Jay-Z built his empire, and before Jimmy Fallon and Justin Timberlake celebrated the history of hip-hop, there was Arsenio Hall. The Arsenio Hall Show was an American late-night talk show hosted by comedian Arsenio Hall. There have been 2 versions of the show. However, season 1 of the show was canceled due to the alleged racial issues. However, the show returned again, but didn't last long, leaving many fans confused.
Even if you think as an interviewer, I have the right to talk also. I didn't like that I was being dealt with different than other people who booked him at the same time, the same month.
Even though the show received a huge fan base, many fans were intrigued that the show kept canceling. In the 90s, Arsenio Hall changed what the late-night television looked like. There were bursts of laughter and entertainment in the room. However, when the show was pulled down, the laughter stopped and screens came back to the usual content. The Arsenio Hall Show was aired from January 3rd, 1989 to May 27th, 1994. Almost 20 years later, Arsenio brought the show back on September 9th, 2013, but it was canceled after 1 season, ending on May 21st, 2014, leaving many fans needing clarification. In the late 80s, late-night TV was very different. Unlike today, where viewers have many options, in 1987, Johnny Carson and David Letterman were the main late-night hosts. It was uncommon to see people of color as guests, let alone hosts, on these shows. Even when black entertainers like Stevie Wonder and Dick Gregory appeared on The Tonight Show, they often weren't invited for interviews. Then came Arsenio Hall, a relatively unknown comedian who had opened for big names like Aretha Franklin, Tom Jones, and Patti LaBelle. He got the chance that most comedians only dreamed of hosting his own late-night talk show. The show broke new ground, showing that hip-hop was mainstream and that artists like MC Hammer, Stevie Wonder, and Luther Vandross could be as popular as any guest on Johnny Carson's show. Arsenio changed late-night TV, pulling viewers away from Carson, who was the king of late night at the time. Arsenio's show was packed with memorable moments. In 1991, his good friend Prince put on a mini-concert, and Bill Clinton played the saxophone to connect with younger and black viewers. The show also gave black artists, athletes, and thinkers a safe space. For instance, Magic Johnson talked with Arsenio just a day after revealing he was HIV positive. The show, which initially ran for 5 years, was trend-setting. Hall said, "There was no YouTube, you couldn't go pull up this and that or Google things," Hall said. "I was like Twitter spreading the," he says. "I wasn't a bluebird, I was a blackbird. I was Black Twitter." Arsenio's show was so popular with the MTV Generation that Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton appeared in June 1992 playing a solid version of Heartbreak Hotel on the saxophone while wearing Ray-Bans. This was just 5 months before he was elected U.S. president. Arsenio had the power to make stars. However, Arsenio's show couldn't last forever. Over the years, its viewership declined, and it eventually had to end. There were several reasons for this, but a major one happened in the summer of 1993. But the fast pace of Hollywood started to wear Arsenio down. He planned to leave his show several months after Minister Louis Farrakhan from the Nation of Islam appeared on it. Rumors circulates around the internet that the show was allegedly canceled because he was pressured to leave the show because of inviting Louis on his show. Paul Mooney stated, "Barbara Walters has Farrakhan on her show, her ratings go through the roof. Arsenio has him on his show, he loses his show." Paul Mooney.
She get Farakhan on her show and her ratings go through the roof. Arsenio has him on his show and Arsenio loses his show.
Allegedly, there was something cooking behind the scenes, however. Many sources reports that the show was canceled because of several reasons. The late-night wars heated up when David Letterman, who had lost out on hosting The Tonight Show to Jay Leno, moved to CBS to start his own show, The Late Show. The Arsenio Hall Show began after The Late Show, starring Joan Rivers, debuted in October 1986 with strong ratings. However, behind-the-scenes conflicts arose between Fox executives and the show's producer, who was Joan Rivers' husband. The executives didn't like the show's tone and the toxic work environment, and they gave Rivers an ultimatum: fire her husband, or the show would be canceled. Rivers chose to leave, and the show ended with her as host. After Rivers was fired, The Late Show continued with a series of guest hosts, including Martin Sheen, Malcolm Jamal Warner, and Robert Townsend. In the summer of 1987, stand-up comedian Arsenio Hall got a chance to guest host, which changed the talk show landscape forever. Before his late-night debut, Hall was given a few weeks to prove himself as a capable host. Hall stated, "I'm playing around for 11 weeks on this Fox show. I put LL Cool J on, I put Houdini on, and the numbers pop. The ratings look good, and they gave me that show to hold on to because they had a battle with Joan Rivers and she left. I'm sitting there, and it starts to work. I realized that instead of going after the old school and the people that had an allegiance to Johnny Carson, there's a generation out there that has never been on a talk show." When Hall first signed on as a guest host, the ratings improved while he was there. After his stint on The Late Show, he focused on co-starring in Eddie Murphy films like Coming to America and Harlem Nights. He also hosted the 1988 MTV Video Music Awards, and his performance was so well received that he hosted the show for 4 straight years. Executives noticed how well Hall connected with audiences and remembered the ratings boost during his time on The Late Show and the VMAs. They decided to take a chance on Hall and gave him his own late-night show to compete with Johnny Carson, offering younger viewers an alternative. This made Hall the first black late-night talk show host in history. The Arsenio Hall show remained popular until the summer of 1993, when the late-night wars heated up. David Letterman, unhappy about losing The Tonight Show hosting job to Jay Leno, decided to start his own show on CBS called The Late Show. This new show would directly compete with Arsenio, who was already losing ratings to Leno's Tonight Show. When Letterman's Late Show premiered in September 1993, it quickly became the top choice for viewers. Many CBS stations that used to air the Arsenio Hall show switched to Letterman's show, bumping Arsenio to a later time slot or dropping it entirely. This led to a significant drop in Arsenio's viewership. By the end of its run, Arsenio's show had a rating of 2.2, while Leno and Letterman were averaging 4.5 or higher. The media often claimed that Arsenio's audience simply outgrew him, with his young and hip viewers moving to Letterman or Leno. In reality, being a syndicated show made it vulnerable to these shifts. Comedian Jon Stewart launched his own MTV talk show, targeting the same young audience as Arsenio. As more late-night shows appeared, the competition became fierce. Arsenio started losing guest bookings to higher-rated shows and quickly began losing viewers. In an effort to boost ratings, Arsenio tried various tactics, including booking controversial and highly entertaining guests. Until Friday, February 25, 1994, Arsenio Hall had been on the air for over 5 years, airing more than 1,000 shows. He was a favorite in the media, but then he booked Minister Farakhan. Shortly after that, his show was canceled, and articles and barbershop conversations were filled with theories that having Farakhan on the show led to its end.
One of the most controversial interviews you ever had was Farakhan.
Yes.
I mean, people were literally...
That was controversial before he came on.
In February 1994, Arsenio Hall announced that Nation of Islam leader Louis Farakhan would be a guest on his show. The announcement drew immediate criticism. Before Farakhan's appearance, viewers and critics slammed Arsenio for having such a controversial figure on the show and for not interviewing him in depth.
I mean, just the fact that it was booked. I noticed it the day it was announced, and it was kind of interesting in that sense.
Somehow, Farakhan's interview with Barbara Walters on 2020 in April 1994 wasn't controversial. His interview with BET's Ed Gordon that same month didn't make headlines either.
I am the same guy I was the day before. I bring people here and I talk to them because I think you might be interested in these people. I'm not exactly sure why booking him caused people to deal with me any differently than Barbara Walters or anybody else that interviewed him.
Because he's black by association, he's bad. He's guilty by association. She's innocent because she's white till you prove that guilty.
Many fans say that this episode was pretty unique compared to other shows. It had a serious vibe from the start. The intro alone went on for over 3 minutes, showing different talks with sound bites. But instead of the usual clips that label Farakhan as anti-Semitic, this time they focused more on the experiences of black people. They showed clips about things like black people feeling ashamed, the of leaders like MLK, the idea of a white Jesus, and the stereotypical roles black people get in Hollywood. Many people alleged that the fact that they showed a more balanced perspective was what some people had an issue with. The critics smelled trouble, and LA Times' Howard Rosenberg ran an article with the headline, "It was a typical evening for Hall. As a worshipful patsy, he was brilliant. As an interviewer, he stunk."
Even if you think as an interviewer, I have the right to talk also. I didn't like that I was being dealt with different than other people who booked him at the same time, the same month.
Ken Parrish Perkins from the Chicago Tribune had something to say about Arsenio Hall, and it wasn't sugar-coated. He said, "Once the prince of late night and now its pauper did himself in by being a lousy interviewer, a world-class fawner, and by letting Nation of Islam leader Louis Farrakhan yak along without so much as a rebuttal." Gregory P. Kane from the Baltimore Sun basically echoed the same idea by saying, "Hall, an infuriatingly uninquisitive man, asked few questions, while the good minister expressed his love for humanity and insisted he had no ill will toward Jews, whites, or anyone else." So, guess what? Exactly 3 months later, on May 27, 1994, Arsenio Hall hosted his final episode. Isn't that kind of weird? Many people think it might be payback for Hall giving Minister Farrakhan a platform. But who knows? Maybe it's just a coincidence, or maybe there's something else going on. Over the years, there have been rumors that the Farrakhan interview was one of the reasons the Arsenio Hall show was canceled. However, Arsenio himself has said that he had already decided to end the show before Farrakhan was even booked. Hall said, "My resignation was long before the Farrakhan booking, and that's on record. I was still trying to do great shows, but the bottom line is that at the time I resigned, the decision to wrap it up came when I decided that I had done everything I could do. It was time to move on and try to be as effective as an entertainer in another venue or with another vehicle." However, in another interview, Hall said that he simply needed a break from the show. He said, "I just wanted to take a break," Arsenio told me in an interview earlier this week. And if the media had taken the time to do its due diligence to research the facts and not rumors, they would have known that. But for a lot of people, 1 + 7 = 4. So it is what it is. As for me, I just needed a break, plain and simple. I found my happiness when I took that time off, mainly with the birth of my son, Arsenio Jr., who is now 14 years old. My son changed my life for the better. After a while, though, he did want to return to television. A few years before Michael Jackson passed away, he and I were at the same dinner party. I was sitting next to him, and he said, "You have to do your show again. People miss you." Puffy was at that same dinner party and stood up and said, "All I want to say is that Arsenio needs to be back on television." So the idea has been in my head for a while. After the show, Hall kind of stayed out of the spotlight. Then, in 1997, he got his own sitcom called The Arsenio Hall Show, where he starred with Vivica A. Fox. But the show didn't really catch on with viewers, and it got canceled after just 7 episodes. Hall later said that he made a deliberate choice to step back from showbiz for a while. Hall stated, "I was determined to be there for my son's first walk, talk, boo-boo, and whatever else. I didn't want to miss a thing, so I made a decision to stop working and put my career on hold. I did a few projects here and there, like voiceovers for cartoons such as Scooby-Doo and The Proud Family. Anything I thought my son would enjoy, but that was it." However, after many years, Arsenio made his big comeback to late-night TV in September 2013. But even before his show started, people were curious about why his previous show got canceled. They were wondering if it had something to do with Minister Farrakhan being on his show. In interviews with lots of different shows like Vlad TV and Oprah's Next Chapter, Arsenio talked about it. He said that even before he invited Minister Farrakhan, he was thinking about leaving his old show. He wasn't totally sure why, but he knew he wanted to spend more time with his family. He said, "Well, first of all, I didn't know why I walked away. Turns out I needed balance." When Arsenio was asked why he left his show, he talked about his 14-year-old son. He even got emotional talking about it on Oprah's Next Chapter. You see, Arsenio had earned a lot of money over the years, so he could afford to be a stay-at-home dad. He wanted to be there for his son every day, helping with homework, taking him to school, and just being around, which was something he missed out on when he was growing up himself. During the second season, his show's ratings have been all over the place. It's kind of ironic because part of the reason is that his main rivals, Jimmy Fallon with The Roots on The Tonight Show and Jimmy Kimmel on ABC, were inspired by Arsenio's old 90s show. They've even picked up some of that cool vibe. It's like Arsenio's battling against souped-up versions of his own show, but Arsenio was not backing down. And things have been looking up, especially since Prince rocked the stage on March 6th. Arsenio's ratings shot up by a whopping 56% compared to February. And get this, Prince's performance even tied with Kimmel's numbers that night. However, the tables turned as the second season was canceled in March 2014 as well, due to a number of reasons. Around October 2013, the executive producer, Neil Kendall, left because he and the team didn't see eye to eye on some creative stuff. Then Eric Pankowski, who was the senior VP of Programming and Development, stepped in while Arsenio looked for someone new to lead the show. They wanted to bring in someone with a lot of experience in comedy to run the show, but they decided it wasn't worth the money to hire a whole new production team. They also wanted to shake things up and get more viewers, so they aired reruns for a little while until they were ready to start showing new episodes again in late October. Arsenio's show was getting pushed around in terms of when it aired. Even Tribune Broadcasting, which was one of the partners, moved the show to a later time slot in New York. And when big stations like CBS heard that Sinclair Broadcast Group was planning to move Arsenio out of the prime 11 p.m. to midnight spot, it was a big deal. CBS did some math and figured out they'd lose a lot of money in advertising if Arsenio got moved. However, another problem kicked in. According to CBS, not enough people were watching. Even though Arsenio started off well, it lost a whopping 60% of viewers aged 18-49, which is a big chunk of its audience. The TV networks Sinclair Broadcast Group, Tribune Co., and Lynn Television decided to change their minds about renewing a show. They moved it from its usual time slots. Originally, CBS Television Distribution had said they'd pick up the show for another season in February. They thought the show was attracting a younger audience and that the host, Hall, was connecting with a new generation. However, later the CBS canceled the show saying, "Unfortunately, the Arsenio Hall show will not return for a second season. While there are many loyal fans of the show, the series did not grow its audience enough to continue. Arsenio is a tremendous talent, and we'd like to thank him for all the hard work and energy he put into the show. We'd also like to thank Tribune and all our station group partners for their support of the show." Hall added, "When I started this adventure with CTD and Tribune, we all knew it would be a challenge. I'm gratified for the year we've had and proud of the show we created. I'd like to thank everyone on my staff for rallying around me and striving to make the best show possible every night." Many fans were left shocked once again by the show's cancellation. After 2014, they never got to see it on their silver screens ever again. Even though the show did well in its first season, many fans doubt Arsenio's comments about taking a break, believing that industry pressure forced him to leave. Anyway, the show will only exist in our memories now. One era lived. That's it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching.